The NBA is finally expanding, but not in the way that we thought that they would. The NBA and FIBA have announced that they're exploring adding an NBA league in Europe, with some rumors suggesting the league could be up and running as soon as next year. This is a pretty shocking development for a lot of people, but I think it's really cool and opens up a ton of interesting possibilities with the NBA itself. Now, generally speaking, the focus around the league in terms of adding new teams has been around expansion to the existing NBA, not creating an entire new league in Europe, even though it's something they've talked about publicly for over a year, but things are really starting to ramp up now. The timing of this is surprising, given the fact that the Celtics were just sold, and that was one of the main obstacles to actual expansion, and it seemed like they were going to be adding teams in potentially Seattle and Las Vegas within the next couple of seasons, but it seems like this new league in Europe is now more of a priority than expansion was, but we're going to talk more about expansion later. Let's talk about what exactly NBA Europe is, this new league in Europe the NBA wants to create. Essentially, they want to create a direct rival, direct competitor as of now to the EuroLeague, which is the top league in Europe for basketball. And this is going to create basically a EuroLeague-like structure, but ran by the NBA and with more financial backing. This creates a new league in Europe that exists within the current European basketball infrastructure. Right now, it looks like it's going to have 12 permanent teams and 4 that can qualify for rotating spots through the existing European basketball system, so 16 teams in total. The league would likely look to make the base of the league some of the more well-known clubs in Europe as permanent members if they can get them, plus some financial backing for smaller clubs in some of these larger markets. And there are plenty of cities in Europe that, in the NBA's opinion, has a large market for basketball, but doesn't have a large-scale basketball team for that group of fans to root for. So you add them to this league with financial backing, you create this huge new fan base and make a ton of money. But the real question is there actually that much interest in those places to drive a whole new basketball team in this new league? Obviously, the interest question remains to be seen, but it's clear, given that the league is moving forward with these plans and looking to actually make this happen, that they feel confident that they can make a lot of money doing this by bringing some of these larger markets, these untapped markets, in their opinion, to life in Europe. In terms of the players on the teams, again, it would exist in the existing European basketball infrastructure, so we're not talking about any NBA players going over there, except for guys that just kind of wash out of the league or that just feel like they have better opportunities in Europe. So it would be some of the top European players potentially, as well as some of these other guys in the NBA that just didn't quite make it, but are still really, really good. Guys like Kendrick Nunn are currently playing really well overseas, guys like that. Now you might be wondering, why would the NBA want to do this in the first place? Like, it seems cool, but what's their reasoning? Well, first and foremost, they're trying to make money at this. This is just another venture for the league, just like 25, 30, 40 years ago when the late David Stern wanted to expand the league internationally, get more international interest because he wanted the league to make more money. He wanted those audiences to be interested in the NBA. He wanted the NBA and basketball to be a global game, and it's been extremely successful to the point where we've got like 15% of the players currently in the league, including some of the best ones, are from Europe. And so the league has become an international game, and that was all because David Stern wanted to make more money, and that's what the league is trying to do here as well. Generally speaking, there are a lot of talented players in Europe. There's a lot of teams in Europe, but from a basketball perspective, they are not doing nearly as well as, in the league's opinion, they should be financially. In the league, the NBA in America has done a really good job of making this obviously a lucrative financial situation, more specifically with things like media rights deals, which teams in Europe have really, really struggled with, and they feel like their expertise in terms of monetizing a basketball league combined with the fan bases and the talent pool in Europe can make them a lot of money. Essentially, there's a lot of history and a good system and talent in place in Europe, but those teams, those clubs, those leagues are just not run as well financially as the NBA in their own opinion. As evidenced by the fact that even the top European basketball clubs, their budgets are a small fraction of what NBA teams run on, and the league wants to implement, obviously, more financial backing. They want to have outside investors come in to add more money to the pool, but also they want it to run like the NBA. They want there to be a salary cap, which currently is not a popular or common structure at all in international basketball. They want teams to be able to compete and pay these guys a ton of money so that the players are invested and they get a ton of talent, but also have it be an even playing field the way theoretically the NBA salary structure is. The when part of this is 26-27 season at the earliest. Those are just rumors. That's just speculation. There's no real announcement here on when this is going to happen, but that would be kind of the earliest that it could happen. And of course, one of the other main questions here is, how does this impact the NBA? Well, first and foremost, this pretty dramatically slows down any expansion plans that anybody thought the NBA had, including myself. The assumption league-wide pretty much for the last half decade has been that eventually we are going to get teams most likely in Seattle and Las Vegas. Maybe Memphis will move to the east, and then we'll have added 2 teams potentially even more than 2 teams moving forward for the league. And that was really the main priority. But now that they've got this other thing going on, it seems like something that they are potentially more excited about. Maybe they think is going to be better for them financially. They are kind of putting expansion, at least in the context that we thought it would be initially, on the back burner, which is a very interesting timing, again, given the fact that the Celtics were just sold. That seemed like one of the last obstacles, kind of puts a price point at what expansion teams would look like. And I also thought the owners would be all in on league expansion because they're going to get a really nice $300-400 million check as an expansion fee from these new teams when they buy into their spot. But instead, the league seems content to move forward with NBA Europe instead and look at expansion potentially down the road. Now, in terms of how this league and the NBA would interact, it does set up some pretty interesting things in terms of potentially an NBA versus NBA Europe title game, whether they do it every year or every other year. They want to set up a tournament potentially, whether it be during the season, after the season. We know that Adam Silver has tried a lot of different things in like an international model. Obviously, the play-in tournament, he wants the in-season tournament to continue to be a thing, which is definitely a European basketball, European sports concept. And so having these two leagues interact, although it would be unprecedented, they have obviously other leagues. They have the G League, which just now got to participate in the All-Star game, which people didn't like. They have the Basketball Africa League as well. Obviously, those teams don't play against NBA teams, but in this context, it could potentially make sense to have these two leagues play against each other to create interest, obviously, for the new league in Europe. But the point of this, as I said, is to make money. And FIBA and the NBA believe that this is an untapped basketball market in Europe. And if they're right, it's going to make them a bunch of money. They're going to create a ton of new fan bases in Europe. And inherently, those fan bases are also going to be invested in the NBA, not just NBA Europe. If they're wrong, obviously, it's a big money loser. And I think their reasoning for this, for thinking that this would work overall, is pretty sound because there is a lot of European interest in the NBA, European influx within the NBA, given the percentages of the amount of players that have come into the league from the international level over the last couple of seasons, over the last decade, really in the NBA. It's clear that there is a lot of interest in this. And it's interesting to me as well that the NBA is partnering with FIBA on this new league because the league, again, as I said in the intro, looks like a direct competitor to the Euro League, which is the top league in Europe. And the Euro League initially used to be run by FIBA, but that entity and the Euro League don't really get along anymore. And now it looks like FIBA's partnering with the NBA, one, to create this new league to make some money, but also to be a direct competitor to the Euro League. Now, that's not a path they necessarily have to go down. They certainly could try to collaborate with the Euro League, potentially merge them together, whatever the case may be. But it's definitely going to be a question in terms of, will this new league try and poach some of these EuroLeague teams, try and get them to come into this NBA Europe League because of the better financial backing, potentially the ability to add better players, more overall viewership, media rights deals, whatever the case may be. There's going to be some options here for some of these EuroLeague teams, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the league handles a potential partnership there, or again, establishing themselves as a direct competitor. Now, at the end of the day, this new league for the NBA is a super interesting development and continues this trend under Adam Silver's leadership of trying new things and experimenting, whether it be the play-in tournament, whether it be the changes to the All-Star game. Not all of them have worked, but he continues to try new things. And I'm anticipating this actually being a pretty big success for the NBA. In a decade from now, we're looking at NBA Europe, or whatever it ends up being called, as a pretty big staple in the European basketball scene.